Hi, I'm Dave, welcome to the channel. In part 3 of the Pioneer Charger series, it's time for paint and decals. So let's have a little bit of a recap. In part 1 of this series, I took a Pioneer Charger and did a bit of tuning on it, changed the guide, changed some of the bearings, bits and pieces like that. In part 2, I stripped all the paint off, chopped the back window out, and replaced it with a piece of plastic card and converted it from a street-bodied recess window charger into a Charger 500 with a flush rear window. So having done this and painted it with some primer, what am I planning? Well, here's a decal set I managed to get from the America for Don White Dodge Charger decals. Now, this is the car that 132 slot cars forgot, because Don White was the man. This is Don. This is one of his versions of a Dodge Charger. There are many. Stock car racing, certainly through the 50s and the 60s and into the 70s, had two sanctioned series, USAC and NASCAR. Now, obviously, NASCAR has prevailed, but during the USAC era, it was Don White who was the man. Won the championship twice and holds the record for the most wins in USAC stock car racing. Now, for reasons I don't understand, nobody seems to have made a slot car of this. He's got various versions of his car, as you can see here, and with the old days and colours on photography, the colour of yellow, well, it could be up for debate. A couple of people have made sort of die-cast models and things. There's a very yellow one and a very pale one. So I don't know about the colour, but I'm going to try and aim for this version of Don White's car in this kind of a yellow. I think it's up for grabs. Nobody's going to argue with me. So I think that yellow might be a bit too bright for what I'm after. And that yellow is supposed to go on the roof of the car in the number 3, which should be body coloured. So I've taken some Vallejo Model Air yellow and some white, and I've mixed it 1 drip yellow to 4 drips of white, and I've come up with this shade. Now I think that'll look quite good on the car. It's not white, it's not lemony, but it's not too startlingly yellow like that 3 is on the decal. So that's what I'm going to go for. I'll mix up a load of that, and the first thing to do is spray the whole body with that colour. Start slowly, just mist some on, build the colour up gradually, don't go piling it on because it will run. Patience is always the key with this sort of thing. So there we are, that's the yellow on and dried, and I have misted a very fine coat of clear lacquer over the top, just because it makes life a bit easier and the line's a bit sharper when you're masking the next layer. So having left the clear coat to dry for 24 hours over the top of that yellow, it's now time to mask it off so that we can paint the roof black, apart from the 3 in the middle, which has got to stay yellow. I also need to paint a black stripe across the back here, and the reason for this is this decal set is great, but this stripe is not the right width for the body that I've got. There's a little kink where the decal folds down the sides, and it's just not in the right place. I'm going to have to mask one off. The other thing is, this 3 is lovely, but I don't think it's big enough. The 3 was definitely a lot bigger on Don White's car than we've got there. So I took a photo of it, I put it into Photoshop, I scanned it around, and I've produced some bigger 3s on this sheet of paper. and I've done them with thicker and thinner lines and a solid one. Now, the reason for this is I'm going to use this frisket film. Now, this stuff is like, it's sticky black plastic. It's clear film. It comes on a roll. There's a backing to it. It's quite thin and it's quite low tack. So you can put it on paint, use it as a mask, and then take it off again, and it should have worked pretty well. And as you can see, the backing's slightly transparent, so you can trace through, which is why I tried different thicknesses of line, just to see which one was easiest, and just traced round one of these outlines with a scalpel to produce, effectively, a number 3 sticker. And here is one I prepared earlier. So that is the frisket film with the backing paper still on it at the moment. So having removed the backing paper, do you see that? It was quick, wasn't it? There is the frisket film number 3, which I'm going to stick to the roof. And like any masking, you know, rub your finger around all of the edges just to make sure it's properly stuck down and there's no risk of paint bleeding underneath it. So that's on there. If I just get that in the light, you should be able to see that. Now I have tested this a little bit on some bits of plastic card, and I tried a smaller 3 to start with. That was when I decided the 3 was the wrong size, and I've had quite good results, so I'm optimistic about painting this roof. Now we have to look at this rear stripe, and again I've done some testing with a model and I'm quite happy with the results here as well, so I'm ready to try this technique on the car. So what I've got is a piece of cutting board that's got a very straight edge and a piece of plastic card just as a softer edge to cut against and a clean surface. I'm going to need some cheap masking tape, a scalpel, 90-degree rule, and because I listen to Robert Swiftslot's, some frog tape. Frog tape is brilliant. Get frog tape if you're doing any painting or masking. So I'll stick the piece of frog tape on this nice clean piece of plastic card. And then I'm going to score some lines using the 90-degree ruler and the edge of the piece of board. I should be able to get them exactly parallel. And having done that, I just trim off the excess bit of tape that I don't need. And I can cut across my longer cuts. And I should be able to lift up thin strips of masking tape. Boy, am I glad that worked. Trim off the bits we don't need. And now we get some crap masking tape. I say crap, it needs to be cheap, cheerful, and not stick to things very well. the sort of masking tape you'd only use for bulk masking, just to hold things together. Don't ever mask actual paint edges with it. So stick that over the top of the nice piece of masking tape. And then peel it off. And now I can stick this to the car. Now fold down the edges. I'll need to adjust those in a bit. And once I'm happy, I've kind of got that in the right place. Smooth out some of the creases. And then just peel the crap masking tape off the good masking tape. And because the edge of the body isn't an exact 90 degrees, you just need to adjust these pieces of masking tape around and trim up the edges just to get it all nice and square. There, I'm pretty happy with that. And the rest of the masking is pretty simple, really, just round the edges of the roof. And there it is, masked up. Everything that's left, we can spray with some black paint. Just double check one last time that that 3 of frisket film on the roof is nicely pressed down. So here we go, time to hit it with the black paint. As with the yellow paint, just start with a gentle mist. Don't lay it on too heavy, because especially with all this masking, you don't want gloopy fluid build up against the edges of the masking. If you take your time, the chances of it bleeding under the masking tape are much lessened. And so there we are, that's the black on. So now the paint is sort of dry to touch, but I haven't left it 24 hours yet. It's time to unmask it very carefully. I'm very pleased with that. The lines are really crisp on that stripe on the back there. And round the edges of the roof line. The frog tape is brilliant. Thank you for the recommendation, Rob. And now it's time to try and take this bit of frisket film off the roof and see how good that number 3 is underneath. Nerve-wracking moment, this. And I touched the roof with my fingers, and as you can see, I'm going to have to touch that in with a paintbrush at the end. This is one of those things I shouldn't have done on camera. In fact, I didn't in the end. I took the last bit off. And there we are. Apart from those 2 little marks where I touched it with my fingers, I could have left it just a little longer before I took that masking off. But I can paint those back in and nobody will notice. And there we are. I've touched that back up. And I've put another thin layer of clear coat gloss acrylic over the top. And we'll wait another 24 hours just to let that harden off properly. And now it's decals time. So I'm fairly happy with the rest of the decals that came in that set. The 3 and the stripe weren't so good, but these door 3s, they're great. So I'll just take you through, just for the sake of completeness really, how I get the decals in. So soak them in some water. Pop them out and lay them on some tissue just to dry off a little bit, and then get into production line, stick the next one in so it's soaking through ready. Just make sure all the water's off that decal, and then with a brush just put a little bit of water where you want to put the decal. This will buy you some time to move the sticker about. If you put it on a dry body, once it's on, it's on. It's a bit of a one-hit wonder. You don't want that. So this should now slide off the backing paper. Should. Oh, there we are. And because it's wet, I can just sort of slap it on the side of the car and then get a cotton bud and use that to push the decal about on the paint. It will float on the little film of water that you put down first, and then you can use the cotton bud to mop up all the spare water and squeegee it out from underneath the decal. And then repeat as necessary. Next one in, this one out. And we'll just keep going for a bit. So there we are, that's all the decals on one side, and obviously the other side is the same. And here's the finished result of the decals. I've put another couple of coats of clear over the top of all of this and left it 24 hours again. But I think I've got everything I want on there. The 3 is fairly good. It could be better. That was just my slightly shaky hand when I was cutting with a scalpel, but it's passable for me. And I've mounted it back on the chassis just so you can see what it's going to look like. But we are now getting up to sort of the 20-minute mark on this video, and that's plenty of your time that you've taken up. So I think this is going to be one of those to be continued. Next time, we'll build the car back up and run it round the track. As always, thanks for watching one of my videos. If you liked it, you will find a button specifically for that. Please subscribe to the channel, it really does help. And if you hit the bell, you'll get a notification the next time I post a video, and indeed the next in this series. And check out this channel, not a slot car channel this time. It's the NASCAR Classics channel. It's full of loads of old footage of NASCAR races, and I find it fascinating.